So it's great talking to you today from the GIBS studio as we think about the election coming up in just over a month. I think from our perspective here at GIBS, there are three key issues that we need to be thinking about as we go into the election. The first relates to the policy question of which party represents which policy. Of course, the ANC is a party that thinks of itself in government as the leader in the economy, that wants to drive economic growth, particularly under the president, drive economic growth to create jobs. We have the DA at a very different point in terms of policy that looks at creating a competitive environment for business. And then, of course, the EFF that has a revolutionary view on expropriation of property, expropriation of industries, and, of course, expropriation of land. Now, these three political choices mean that this election is probably the most consequential election that democratic South Africa has seen. If we look at the second issue outside of policy, it is really an issue about people and population. As you would know, South Africa has a young population. The average age of the voting population is 27 years of age. And with an unemployment rate of over 50% for under 35-year-olds, you can imagine that jobs and economic inclusion will be at the heart of the election. So I think the third big issue that will shape this election will be around corruption and the efficiency of the state. As the middle class, but in particular in South Africa, deals with the likes of load shedding out of Eskom, deals with the incapacity of the likes of PRASA and other state institutions, they'll be looking very seriously at the politicians to say which political party is going to be serious about corruption, serious about creating law and order, using the courts and the other instruments of the state to bring justice to South Africans. I think, as I've said, that this election is the most consequential for democratic South Africa to date. Because of the young population, because of the very high levels of unemployment, the population will be looking for a political party that can deliver economic growth and economic inclusion. Well, what does this mean for business? Business in South Africa is really at a crossroads where it has to choose between protecting its short-term interests versus committing to the long-term interests of the country. The only way that we will have growth above 2 or 3% or growth around 5% to create the jobs we need is if business takes a longer-term view of the country. If we take a long-term view, we are in Africa, we have proximity to the African markets, we have wonderful natural resources, we have a young working population, and so the potential is there for business to see a return on investment if we make that long-term commitment. I think that lastly, this election will likely be shaped by the urban vote. Now we have more than 65% of the population living in cities. Most of them are young people living in the peri-urban environment where food inflation is high, cost of transportation is high, and economic opportunities are really few and far between. And so as business makes its decisions in this election about who it supports, it needs to look at the medium to long term to say, how do we create an environment that is conducive for that peri-urban voter that is looking for a leg up, looking for a better life, looking for the upward mobility that they expect in a democracy?